Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guest with your host, Christina Nichman.
If you are an American and concerned about your family's health and safety, you'll not want to miss Savvy Central Radio's live interview and film screening with Dr. Gregory A. Smith, MD, producer of American Addict 2, taking place this November 6th and 7th. American Addict 2 digs deeper into the world of corruption, politics, and pharmaceutical greed. Tickets are limited for this private viewing, live interview, and Q&A, so get your tickets today while they last at bit.ly/AmericanAddict2. This is your host, Christina Nichman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest today is Adele Michal. She helps entrepreneurs and small business owners and service professionals make more money by teaching them how to sell more authentically instead of fearing sales. Before becoming a sales trainer and coach, Adele earned a master's in counseling psychology and had a private therapy practice. She focused her work on helping clients enhance their performance in sales by using simple mind-body practices that create confidence, certainty, and charisma in every situation. Find out more about Adele at Adele Michals, ADELEMICHAL.com. Hi, Adele. Welcome back to Savvy Central Radio. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Christina. So glad to be with you again and glad to be with your listeners.
Well, I'm happy to have you back. Today we're going to talk about one of the biggest topics that we get asked on, in the two of them actually, and that's sales and money. But we're going to talk really focused today on sales. And you've helped countless entrepreneurs get a handle on sales in their business. But before we get started with our conversations, for those who might have missed our first conversation together, share a little bit about your background, how you came to helping people with their finances, their money, and their sales.
Well, I'm like a lot of people in my industry. I came to it through a lot of challenges and struggles myself. Money isn't a driver for me. Service is more of a driver, helping people get what they want. It's really a driver. So I suffered for a long time, really not being able to ask for money, not being comfortable with money. And that kind of spilled over into sales. But I realized I had a really good skill set. I'm a former therapist. People will tell me stuff and keep it very confidential, but I know how to help them with what might be going on. So I just thought, I've really had these struggles. I look around at my colleagues in business, and many of them come from a large organization or an educational organization or healthcare, and they weren't trained to be salespeople. And yet they're in their own business now where they have to learn how to sell. And many of them really avoid it or find it just really terrifying. And I had the experience 2 years ago. I was a sponsor and had a booth at a large event. And there were 900 people. I attracted a lot of attention and then went and got people who wanted to talk to me about what I did. And when I followed up with them, I didn't convert any of them. I got one client out of this huge event, and she already knew me. And it really was a turning point in my business because I realized I either had to learn how to sell or I had to stop doing what I love to do and what I'm good at. And so I chose to face my fear of selling. And that's why I'm here today, because that's what I want to help other people who have their own business that really fear sales realize it is something that's scary, but you can actually get through that fear to a place of mastery, but you have to be willing to face it. So I bring my skills at communications, my skills at peak performance. I used to work with athletes to help them compete at their very best, and now I do that with business people. So I bring those threads together to help people do one of the most, if you're in a for-profit business, it probably is marketing and sales are the primary things you have to master to stay in business. There are lots of other things you have to do, but those two things, once you get them going, you can really scale your business. So that's how I got here.
And I like what you're saying there because it's so true. And I think that's probably the number one thing that affects small business owners is really not having a handle on sales in particular, not even finance, not even maybe marketing so much, but really sales. Because if you don't have that down, nothing else flies. And I can totally identify. It's still something I'm working on learning and mastering myself right now. So from your experience of working with many business owners, what have you found to be some of the top myths that folks have about sales, and why do you think these myths permeate in our society even today?
Well, that's a great question. I think Daniel Pink has written a fabulous book called To Sell is Human. And in his research, he found that the number one association that average Americans have with sales is sleazy car salesman. Sleazy car salesman. And for any of your listeners who sell cars, I'm sorry, but that's what he found. And all of us have had the experience of someone who tries to manipulate us or hard sell us or not tell us the truth in a sales transactions. And I think we all recoil and say, I am never doing that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, that becomes kind of the template, if you will, for what a salesperson is. So for me, that's one, somebody who's hard sell, manipulative. The other one is the slick one. It's like, I think a lot of like pharmaceutical representatives. They dress nicely. They're really good at what they do. I've had some people in the financial sector as well. I mean, they were just so smooth. It's like you're almost saying yes before you even know that they're asking you anything.
Yeah, I've met those.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like, well, I can't be like that. Like, I don't want to be like the sleazy person, and I can't be like the slick person. So what does that leave for me? So I think that our picture of what a salesperson is very skewed to those two ends. And that leaves a lot of people out in the middle. And it shouldn't, because if you've ever been around a child, or if you've ever been a child, children have very natural sales skills. They're persistent. They don't mind asking. They know what they want, and they're going to go for it. And that kind of gets trained out of us adults. Yeah. So many of us have skills that we don't even know that we have, and we are not even going to even go over there because we don't, we don't have a picture of someone who's a salesperson who really matches our values. I think that's the biggest myth that I see that many small business owners have is, I will have to give up my values and do something that's not in integrity for me in order to be a good salesperson. And that's not true. It's just not true.
It's absolutely not true. And interestingly, when I started in the field of collections back in corporate many, many years ago in my 20s, I was horrified to get the job. I first started just doing accounting, and they thrust me into the collections accounts receivable arena. And I was like, I am not picking up the phone and calling people for money. It's just not happening. And for me, it was like when I thought of collectors, I thought of like long sharks, ready to break your legs and
Yes.
really harass you, scream at you, holler at you. I thought that's how it had to go down. And over the years of learning the process, I began to see it and reframe my idea of what collections is as, okay, we have provided a service, and now we're just essentially closing the sale and asking them to pay for what we've given them of value. Yeah. And so then after reframing it and realizing that I'm here to help them solve the problem of where to find the money to pay for what they've bought and what they have. And when I reframed it, then I became a helper. I became someone to serve, and it changed everything because now I became their friend. And it reflected at the end of the year when, I would get like a whole bunch of Christmas presents from people I collected from. And they said, "You're just the best darn collector I've ever had call me."
Wow.
And it's interesting, Adele, because when I started doing sales, my business, I didn't immediately equate sales as being, well, similar to collections until it was my mentor that said, what you've been doing all these years in collections is basically selling, completing the sales transaction, really. And so you've actually been doing it for years. You just didn't call it sales.
That's really brilliant.
Yeah.
That's really brilliant. Good.
Yeah, that was brilliant of her.
And you were providing a service too. I mean, it's not one that you would automatically think of. So good on you for getting there. But you were helping them be their word and do what they said they were going to do and have integrity around their promises.
Exactly. Because no one wakes up one day and says, "Hey, man, I don't want to pay for my bills today." I mean, I think extenuating circumstances happen where you lose a job, a kid gets sick. No one wants to be in those situations. It feels horrible. There's guilt, there's shame wrapped up in it. But I would not make them feel guilty and shameful because I've gone through it. And I would say, okay, I understand things are tough, but you're not going to be here forever. It's temporary. But I'm just going to check up on you on a weekly basis, see where you're at. And because I was so respectful and honest and letting them know ahead of time how things were going to go down, they would pick up the phone when I would call and tell me, okay, I went for a bunch of interviews, didn't get it. And then when they got the job, they would call me and say, okay, we got the job, we're getting money in, but all I have is like $10 I can give you a month or $10 a week. And I said, it's something. If you can make a promise to put that on the table and really give that to me, that's a promise I can start with. Because I know then that they hold their word for that. As they get more, they'll be willing to put more down.
Excellent. Yep.
Yeah, actually. So what do you think is the number one mindset mistake you've seen business owners make with regards to sales?
I think the number one mistake is thinking that they can't do it.
That's true.
That they can't do it, that there's not a way for them. No matter, some people who are really shy say, well, I'm too shy to do sales. Well, I'll tell you, some of the introverts that I've met are the best salespeople, the best. Or they may think, oh, I can't ask anybody for anything. So I think it's that I can't do it is the biggest mindset mistake that we make as business owners.
And that is indeed true. It was the same thing for me in collections. The idea of asking was just the hardest thing. And it's interesting that you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation that as kids, you had no problem asking for ice cream, going out to play, I want this toy. And then somehow as adults, we came to realize that it's not a good idea to ask for stuff.
Yeah, I think we're trained. I think it's trained out of us. There's a lot of studies that show creativity is trained out of us. I think asking is as well. We're made fun of, we're ridiculed, we're told to, sit down or shut up, whatever. And people aren't trying to be malicious. It's just that's the behavior that they're trying to reinforce. And so, we go that way. So my thing is you can master sales. If I can do it, and probably Christina, you might say this too, if you can do it. And when I say master, I think there's always room to grow, always room to get better. But if you can face the fear and get into the pool and start splashing around, you can start getting good at it. And what does that give us? That gives us the opportunity to help more people with what we do.
Yes. And what I would venture to even mention as well is reframing the idea. Let's say, okay, I'm going to think about sales differently, like I did with collections. I'm going to choose to look at it in a different way, because also from the opposite side, I've called people who were interested in working with me and for whatever reason didn't end up paying, couldn't stay the track, and they would do what they used to do to me in collections, which they would stop calling me back. And then that is, of course, not holding up to your side of the bargain, and not holding your promise, not being in integrity. And no one wants to be in that area. And so to be good at sales, you want people as a business owner to pay you on time in a timely fashion, to have integrity with you. So you'll want to do that for your vendors and anyone you do business with as well. So I think if you just reframe what sales means to you, then on both sides of the coin, you'll be able to approach it in a different way.
Right. Yeah, I think sales really are critical conversations that have to happen for a business transaction to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're doing a lot of online selling, at some point you're going to have to talk to another human being and ask them, really talk to them. And we can talk about that, like, what the process is, but really talk to them, listen to them, and hear what they need, and ask them to work with you if what you do would help them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned in our first conversation together that you help coaches and consultants with consultative sales. What exactly does this mean?
Right. Yeah. Consultative sales is.
I said it wrong. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's used in the industry, in the sales industry, and what it means is you and I not being across the table from each other like adversaries, but being on the same side of the table. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, let's look at what your problem is, because a sale doesn't need to happen unless there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And the problem could be, I'm getting married, I want a beautiful wedding gown. So if you're a bridal consultant, you don't want to be an adversary, you want to be a consultant to me. So like in your head, thinking about sitting down with me and looking at pictures of bridal gowns together, that's going to help you know what I want. And you might go, oh, you like that? Okay, here's a dress that we stock that I think you would really like. May I show it to you? Mm-hmm. So it's consultative sales is becoming a consultant. You're the consultant. You have a knowledge base. I'm the customer. I have a need. You apply your knowledge base to what I have. And if it's a fit, then you ask me if I want to invest in your solution so that a business transaction happens.
So what I'm getting from this is actually you're looking at it not so much from just taking a sale and getting their money, but let's look at see how we can make this a win-win where I give and of course you give for the value I give.
Yeah. I mean, let me just ask you a question. Mm-hmm. If you had the choice, would you interact with a hard sales person, somebody who's trying to jam something down your throat?
Of course not. No way.
No. Mm-hmm. No, and I think and this is a point that Dan Pink makes in his book, To Sell is Human, we have so much information at our fingertips. And whether you like internet reviews or not, they will tell you a story about a person, a product, a service, a company. Mm-hmm. And and a car price. So, I can go to a car showroom and know exactly what I should be paying for that if I do my research online. So a car salesperson cannot jam the wrong price down my throat, right? Mm-hmm. So what we're really hungry for now is authenticity. I mean, we bandy that word about all the time, but I want to know that you as a salesperson want what's best for me, whether that makes you a sale or not. And if I say I have X need and you say, gosh, I don't work with X needs, but my colleague does. Mm-hmm. So you're looking after my interests as much as your own and referring me if you can't help me. I mean, that's consultative sales. But if you can't help me, you can tell me how and ask me if I would like to work with you.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Makes complete sense. So say one of our listeners happen to be listening in today and they're having a heck of a time with their sales. They don't know where to begin. They're not having the results they want to have. How can they begin to get a handle on what mistakes they might be making in their sales calls so that they can change the results?
Right. Well, there are a couple of things that I would encourage them to look at. One is before they make another sales call is to just sit and think about what their intention was for the sales calls that didn't go the way they wanted them to. And what I mean by that is, were they intending to create or further a relationship that might result in a sale, if not today, then down the line? Was their intention to create a relationship of trust and mutual respect so that they would be someone that someone would want to buy from? Mm-hmm. Or were they trying to be liked? And that was my mistake when I was doing my follow-up calls 2 years ago. I just was chit-chatting because I just wanted to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
If I had had the intention to develop that relationship, I would have taken more leadership in the conversation, and I would have asked more. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one. What's your intention? And the second one is, how much are you listening and how much are you talking? Because in the first part of the conversation, there are actually two parts in a sales conversation. There's more sophistication than I'm going to say right now, but basically there are two parts. There's the listening, and then there's the asking.
Mm-hmm.
And the listening should be about 80%. 20% asking.
Mm-hmm.
So recently I was working with a client, and she comes from the medical field, and she's not used to having to sell, because she got referrals all the time. A lot of people are in that position that for the first time in their career, they're having to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had this practice sales conversation, and she was just all over herself trying to, justify her pricing. She did not know that she could just ask me questions to find out what I needed for the first 80% of the conversation. And then the last 20%, she could say, well, this is what I hear your issues are, and this is what I provide. May I tell you more about that?
Yeah, I get you. And I've often heard from a number of mentors that work in the field of sales that one of the biggest problems they see is that people are just not listening. They get blah, 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 and of course trying to prove their prices, which I know I've done. If they start saying I can't afford it or something like that, I'm just like, well, you're getting this much value, and I'm only, and I'm like, stop it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just as a side note, I really am coming to think that what we are calling objections are really the salesperson is not understanding the motivation of the person they're talking to. So there's actually, the money may be there, but what the solution that was presented may not seem to be the right fit, or may not seem to be the right solution for that person. So, more questions, more permission to go deeper into the conversation is really needed. And I will say this, let me say this, that a sales trainer I talked to recently, she trains in corporations all over the country. She goes, typically when she trains men, they are great at the ask. They're great at the last part. They're terrible at the listen. And women are just the opposite. They're great at the listen, and then they won't ask. Yeah. So, that may not be true for everybody on the call, but if it is true for you, if you're better at one than the other, then ramping up your skills at the one that you're not as good at is really important.
Yeah, I completely get you. And for anyone listening in, because we're getting close to the end of our time together, I want them to find out how they get in touch with you, find out more about you, and work with you if they want to.
Well, great. Thank you. I have two things to offer your folks. One is a free gift. It's about how your inner money movies are stopping you from making more sales. And you can get that at adelemichal.com, and I'll spell that /gift. It's A as in Apple, D as in David, E, L as in Lucy, E, Adele, MICHAL, no E, no S, MICHAL.com /gift. And if you'd like to have a complimentary conversation, make more sales discovery session with me, it's the same website, adelemichal.com /discovery. I'd be happy to spend some time on the phone with you. We can dissect where your mistakes may be and where you might be buying into a myth that you can't do this. And I'll give you some strategic actions that you can take from the call. And if it would be a fit for us to work together, I'll talk to you about that too.
Great. Now, what would you say, just before we end out here, would be like the top 3 tips for anyone who is feeling a little fear around the selling area?
Okay, the first tip is that you can do this. You can do this. I would like you to look in the mirror at yourself and say, you can do this, because you really can. The second tip is to check your intention. Is your intention to be of service and to be rewarded for what you do? Or do you feel like you only have to give it away? You know, that give and receive stuff that can get a little tricky. Is your intention to serve and to receive? So it should be the whole circle. And the third tip would be listen a lot more than you talk.
Good one. Now, if you're in a position where you're not really comfortable with the receiving end, how would they begin to conquer that particular issue?
Well, that's another interview, but
that's a longer talk.
Yeah, but very, very simply, I will just tell you that people who are givers and who learn to be good receivers are the top performers in business, in sales and other aspects of business. And this is from a wonderful book called Give and Take by Adam Grant.
Good book, yes.
Give and Take. And what he found in his research and research of others is that givers come out on top, but only if they also have a self-interest. Givers who overgive and don't have a self-interest, they wind up at the bottom of the barrel.
Wow, that's really, I remember him talking, I saw him at a TED Talk, and that's where I first found out about him, and I found it to be amazing, and I think I read the first couple chapters that were free on his website, and I was like, I got to get that guy on my show.
He is a really good guy. He's a giver. Yeah.
And see, interestingly, he had said that there's two types of givers. Givers that on one side of the, what do you call it, continuum that are not doing well, and then the other side that are doing well, but the trick is that you have to be willing to receive. And that's where the problem comes. Because I know myself, I was such a giver, but it came from a space of fear. It came from a space of, I want people to like me, like you were mentioning earlier. So really, it wasn't completely altruistic as I thought it was at the time. It was really about, please like me, please like me, please like me. And so, so I continually have to pay attention. Am I trying to be a people pleaser right now?
Well, I think one way to begin to think about this is look at the larger picture. Like for you want to help business people with your interviews on Savvy Central Radio. But if you don't receive, monies to stay in business, then that can't continue. And that's true for all of us. I mean, unless you're running a not-for-profit, you have to receive money for your work. And it's not your value. It's the value of what you offer.
Yeah.
And so I think if we look at the bigger picture and say, oh my gosh, this is so hard for me, but I'm really going to try to take a step in this direction. And that's all it is. It's just one little step.
One little tweak. Yeah. And because the deal is also, if you have this great gift and you'd like to give it to the world, and if you don't accept or receive, then it just stops. The flow stops. You're not able to give. And then how many people are not served by you not giving your great gift? And the other issue, I think, Adele, is that people often take for granted whatever their gift is. Oh, a million people can do that. No biggie. But it's not. It's not true. What one person does as a coach or another person does as an architecture or designer, I can't do.
That's really true. I think that if it's easy for you, you think it's easy for everybody, and it's not. It's easy for you, and that's your gift. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again for coming to Savvy Central Radio and sharing your gifts and talents. What would you like to leave our audience with before we head on out?
You can do this. Believe in yourself. We need what you have. Get good at sales.
You betcha. Absolutely. And everyone go to Adele Michal, and that's ADELEMICHAL.com. And to get that gift, add a /gift, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again, Adele, for coming to Savvy Central Radio and sharing your gifts and talents today.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's been such a pleasure.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.